So, Miles, is it? Do you have a wife, girlfriend, family? Anyone who would miss you if you were gone, say, for a year, and then we kick you out of a helicopter with a bullet hole in you and you just disappear? No? Perfect. You are the man for the job. Welcome back to Movie Monday. Every Monday we review a new movie here on the channel, but not only that, a quick synopsis and summary of the movie, but more importantly, what type of firearms did they use in this movie? So if you're like me, you're a big movie buff, which is probably why you tuned into this right here, because not only I like the movies, I like to see why the prop department decided to go in which direction they did on the various firearms in the movies, because a lot of times you're like, oh wow, why did they choose that? Well, that's weird. That's an odd choice for this situation, especially the older movies. They put in the most random sub-ins to fill in the spot for a firearm that they wanted to get the idea or the look they wanted, even though it makes no sense from maybe a caliber perspective or a magazine capacity perspective. Whatever it is, Movie Monday, and today we're reviewing The Gorge 2025, featuring Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sigourney Weaver. Just came out on Apple TV Plus. Now that is a subscription service you probably heard of because Apple will flag up when you get a new phone or a new laptop or a new iPad. They'll say, hey, here's 3 months for free. And you said, okay, here's 3 months. And you set an alarm on your phone. In 3 months, you cancel it, right? So that is where this service is. But they have like Ted Lasso. There's a few other good movies and shows. But The Gorge just came out. And with that is a fascinating tale, at least for a streaming movie. That's the thing. It's a streaming movie. So this is a movie where if you have the subscription, you can watch for free, right? And I think this is one of the better action movie, gunplay, zombie type movies out there in recent years, especially for Apple TV Plus. It's definitely one of the best movies on that platform for sure. In fact, I re-upped my subscription just to go and watch it and check it out just because I'm hearing the reviews and what people are saying about it. Now it's just for entertainment. It's not, believable or whatever. There's a lot of plot holes.
Yeah. Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
That's not what we're here to talk about. Essentially, what it is this evil corporation back in World War II. They had these experiments with biochemical engineering, and they had this gorge where they were testing out these biochemicals, and it was actually like the East and the West. The Soviet Union, the British and American, and they all came together at one point, which is odd to say the least at that point. And apparently none of the major leaders knew about it. They all came together to develop this weapon, and they're going to use it against the Nazis or the Japanese or whatever it was. And then of course they had the atomic bomb. It was the equivalent to the atomic bomb. They had this bioengineered weapon they were going to use. All right, so anyways, the doctors and the soldiers and everyone down in this gorge that they're testing all this stuff on, of course, get infected. The gorge gets kind of closed off. Allegedly they sent in battalions of troops in there, so you have a bunch of airborne troops and a bunch of like cavalry horses for some reason as well. And they're all in there from all different countries, and they have different conscript uniforms and US uniforms and British uniforms and all that. So it's kind of a fun little thing going on there. And of course now they're all zombies because they're all infected. So they close the gorge off, put all this comms blocking equipment up top, 2 big towers that way no one can see in the satellites. They have these towers set up to make sure they can go knock out these zombies if they start crawling up the ledges of this gorge. But they want to keep the gorge open, make sure that they can go and test and kind of evaluate what is going on with their experiment. So this new company is out there now in 2025, right? And they're getting these 2 people with no attachments, Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, one from the East, Russia, Soviet Union bloc, right? One from the West, British, US, and they go and they have them in these towers, and they're like the insurance plan because they also have a bunch of miniguns and different things like that set up, and it looks even like one of the Sea Whizzes there. We're going to go into all that, kind of talking about some of the bigger guns that aren't just regular handguns and rifles in here, but of course they have Western weapons, ARs and pistols and all that, right? And then Eastern weapons with a bunch of different kinds of AKs. So it was a lot of fun. It was kind of cool seeing the East versus West. So as a synopsis of the movie, of course, in the end, Miles and Anya there come together and they jump in the gorge and, they save the day, take down the evil corporation. So Draza, who is Anya Taylor-Joy, is this assassin from the East, right, from the Soviet Union or former Soviet Union, and she's still kind of links up with that. I guess her dad was KGB and all that. So she actually is a sniper taking out various targets as a hitman. So she has an Accuracy International AXMC, it appears. It's pretty dark. She's in like this weird like homemade tunnel tree set up in a cave kind of thing, looking kind of behind a bush, and she has a suppressor on there, what it seems like. But that is a .338 Lapua Magnum, which I could almost tell because she gives the case to her dad when she comes back, and he's like, oh, pass on your grief to me and I'll hold it. And he has a bunch of these rounds in there, so I'm assuming that's her like go-to is like a .338, which is perfect you know, sets up fine for a long distance range like that. And they joke about it, her and Miles joke about who has the longer shots, and were you there back in, you know, Bosnia when this happened, or whatever it was, right? So it's kind of funny them going back and forth throughout this movie talking about long distance, because they're both snipers. Miles is a sniper, old US Marine, and it sounds like he's currently like a private contractor, basically. So Miles hikes in to the Western Tower, and the first guy he sees is his person that he's going to replace, and that is a British Royal Marine. All right, now this guy is carrying something on his shoulder, which I had to really dig deep. I was like, what is that? It looks like a saw, so an M249, right, from the US, but it's not. I think it's the British equivalent to the saw, which is a L110A1 light machine gun, and it even has a paratrooper collapsible stock. From what I can tell, he doesn't use it. He just kind of gives Miles the tour. He has it over his shoulder. I just thought that was really cool, because I was like, that doesn't look like a saw, but being a British Royal Marine, it was kind of cool if they did go that route for a British weapon like that. Then that was neat to see. Miles, who is known as Levi in the movie, is very fond of the M4A1, which is a pretty standard rifle actually for the US forces, even the British forces really. And with that, it's just, you know, 5.56, maybe an EOTech on there, what it looks like from what I'm seeing in the pictures. Flat top rail, front is a fixed A front post there for the front sight. It doesn't have any fancy lights or anything like that on there from what I can tell. It's pretty bone stock, honestly, something maybe would have been handed out for the US Army or US Marines, really. Ran with that almost the entire movie. That was his go-to, which makes sense because he's a part of the Western nation of the Western Tower, right? And of course, Draza, you know where this is going, the AKM, which is essentially an AK-47 7.62 by 39. It looks to be that's her go-to that she has tricked out, even with a grenade launcher of some type in there as well on the underbarrel. It's interesting because you're watching this movie and the first big thing I see is, oh, she has a low power sight and she's sniping 500 yards away. The other tower hitting the guy's water bottle with like a 1X sight. And then he did the same thing with the EOTech, which EOTechs, if you know, are a circle with a dot, and they're pretty grainy, honestly. It's designed to have CQB really close up, get that circle on a target, right? But it's 1X. So he was doing the same thing, sniping things on her side with his M4A1 in the same kind of fashion, but they're both snipers, hella accurate, whatever it is, right? And with that, I thought it was kind of fun to see them go back and forth. And part of her courtship really was to utilize that rifle to snipe and kind of get his attention at certain times. And they're kind of talking back and forth, kind of getting to know each other through various texts and signs. Actually, that part of the movie where they had no communication, they weren't supposed to have contact, that was actually really cool. I could have watched like over half the movie of them going back and forth, doing signs and all that. And yes, Miles plays the drums at one point related to his older movies, and then Anya plays chess. And I guess they had some kind of press tour and they were discussing that too, about how she's like, oh, Queen's Gambit versus Whiplash, right? And I enjoyed that show a lot, and we liked that movie as well. So it was kind of funny to see them kind of go back to that, just kind of a poke and prod at that past roles they had. This movie is very dark, and I'm not really talking about the horror aspect of it or the scary parts, really. It's actually all the interior shots. It looks like they filmed them and they want to be really dark and dingy, like, oh, they're in a bunker. It's a terrible job. You have to sit there and by yourself, solo mission, and you have this other person you don't really know, you can't really contact on the other side. Well, they have an armory that's like in this bunker set up, and they're talking about all this different equipment they have and the different kinds of rocket launchers, and they even use them to like launch zip lines and things like that, right? Well, there's a couple of shots you see throughout the movie with like, you know, oh, okay, so there's an M4A1 in there, maybe a rack of them. I can't really make out any handguns. We'll talk about the handguns. They do use handguns for like a brief moment there down in the gorge, and then a couple times up top too. But they have like AK-74s, it looks like, on her rack system with maybe some RPGs, which makes sense. He had an RPG on his side, which I thought was interesting, but you can't really tell too much about what they are, but those are great options too. And of course, like you saw, I have Zastava M70s and all that. Those AKs are great. Even some of the 5.56 AKs on there, which are very comparable to like an AK-74 with that 5.45 round. That particular round is very comparable to like a 5.56. That's kind of why they built it. I think just kind of compare them a little bit. I have the FB Ratum Barrel, and that is a fantastic 5.56. I just reviewed the PSA AK-102, another fantastic choice for AK rifles there if you're looking at something more modern for that kind of cartridge, since 5.45 is a little tough to get, if not just real expensive. You do get a very quick glimpse of a PPSH-41. That's right, the little Spitfire that the Soviet Union hauled around all over Germany to take Berlin. That's kind of neat. It was just on the weapons wall. It would have been fun to take that out, though, I think, if she should have grabbed that as like a backup and bring it down there. I'm sure that wood's kind of heavy, but that is interesting. They just left it there for all these decades, and they just have this PPSH-41 just chilling. Handguns do make an appearance in several scenes in this movie, but they're absolutely not the primary use for a weapon for either one of these characters, really. It seems like they just use them a couple of times, and really rifles are the go-to, with some grenades and things like that, and some heavy machine guns as well, which we'll talk about next. But the SIG P250 Draza, right, Anya, she ends up using that to get Miles' attention, so Levi's attention across the way during like a chess game, and during just in general, just kind of be like, hey, I'm over here. And that's kind of what I saw the 250, which is fascinating because the 250 was made back in the early 2000s, I think, so it was a 2007, I believe, and it's a hammer-fired 9mm, right, but it looks just like a P320, and in fact, the P320 most likely took over for that entire series, because I think the 250 has been discontinued, but it seemed to be very reliable. People seem to like it. Now she has that, and then most likely carry that down with her into the gorge. There are a couple of gorge scenes, but if you've seen the movie, when they go into the bottom there, it is not only dark, it's like foggy and purple lights and flashing like lightning effects and rain, and it's very hard to make out anything. And they both have handguns used several times. I want to say she probably uses that P250, or maybe not the two-tone, but maybe it's like a just straight black one. And he most likely pulls out his handgun, I think just like once or twice I saw briefly, and you can barely see what it is. And I want to say it's probably a Glock. It looks kind of like that shape, but if you look up the notes on the prop department, they don't really give too much information on it. They just say, oh, we grabbed a handgun, and I'm like, okay, guys, so you got a black handgun, probably a Glock, right? He probably has like a Glock 17 down there or something, but that's what I saw from a handgun. That's it. There's no other handgun use really throughout this movie. So I mentioned earlier the towers are just insurance for the overall defense of this gorge, and making sure whatever is in there can't get out, and they want to keep it down there to study, right? Well, turns out the primary defense are these automated machine gun setups, right? So they have a couple of them. So they have some right on the top of the valley, right on the mountaintops there, and they have about two, I think, in each tower as well. We'll talk about that. Those are more manually operated, but the automated ones are down on the floor, right? So of course the US side has, that's right, you guessed it, they have the M134 minigun. Makes sense, has the tracker and the sensor and everything, can track movement. Now her side is the fascinating one. Now from what I saw from that one scene where they're all just lit up, everything's going crazy, you hear on her side there, I think it's a Phalanx. All right, so I think it is a Sea-Wiz. So that's a Phalanx Sea-Wiz, and it's, I think for some reason on her side, it could be like the Russian variant of it. Now the towers, they each have at least two manually operated. Looks like foot pedal. You can hit a pedal and they pop up. So of course the US side, the Western side, has the Browning M2, and Miles, you know, Levi jumps on that thing and lights up that entire other wall there and just takes out those zombie guys. And of course Anya's side has the Dishka. The Dishka is just world renowned from that whole side of the eastern side comm block, right? Heavy machine gun, 12.7 by 108 millimeter round, but the Dishka is pretty famous. You see those pop up all the time. Now towards the end of the movie, you do see the appearance of a Steyr. That's right, it's a Steyr HS50M1. That's a 50 BMG, and Levi uses that to knock out the comms network. So now they're like, oh, everyone can see this thing if, you know, Google Earth came over now, and they want to kind of take down the whole operation and show the world what's going on there. And in that scene with Miles running through the woods there, I can kind of see a glimpse of the handgun that at least he has in that scene, and it definitely looks like a Glock 17 with the finger groove, so it's probably like an earlier gen. which I have the Ruger RXM, which is a Glock clone. That thing's been fantastic. It's a clone of the 19 for the Glock series. Now I do want to get a Glock. I need to get maybe like a Glock 19X. I feel like that's something that's just really hip right now, and it's still one of those things that might be a collectible someday. So I feel like I should get a 19X so I can kind of include it in these series, because that would be really cool with that peanut buttery FDE. While Miles is taking out that comms system, Anya, I think, is still using that Accuracy International. I think she likes that 338 Lapua. She's using it to knock out these drones with miniguns on it, and which makes sense. It seems like a good enough round. Plus, 50 BMG, I was watching him run through the woods with this thing, and they're like clocking how many kilometers they have to get away. I'm like, he's hauling this heavy rifle through the woods, up a mountain, and then having to take that shot, which I guess is what they're made and trained to do, really, from a sniper perspective. This is what he's trained for all of his life, but that's a heavy rifle to be hauling up like that. So good on him. Took out the comms, let the world know about this place. At the end of this movie, they ditch all their weapons, it seems like, and they both escape, and they're planning on meeting up down the road, and you'll see in the end there how this all works out. So they don't have anything in the end. However, there is an atomic bomb that was set up down there designed to essentially wipe out the entire facility and everything that was going on, all the experiments, and making sure everything is just gone. So that thing goes off, and it's like just a mini nuclear warhead down there. It seems it's like in a tower. So that's like the last big weapon you see just go down, blows up, knocks out the evil CEO of the evil corporation's helicopter. So the day is won. I think overall this movie, from a firearm standpoint, did really well. Just I thought it was kind of interesting watching it and being like, oh, the East versus the West, right? So you're looking at different firearms and how they designed on what they wanted to have stocked in their armory, in their inventory, and what they were going to use. And that was a good time to kind of watch and kind of see what they were pulling out. I did think it was kind of odd that you didn't see in the armory maybe like a 1911 potentially from World War I or World War II, saying that this was a whole World War II experiment. Could have done that. But then on her side, why didn't we have any Max, right? The Makarov, you know? I feel like that would have been a good option to have with the Makarov there, but I guess they're just not that modern, so they're like, oh, we'll throw Glocks and SIGs in there and make it more modern, right? So, well, hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. This is a fun ride. If you haven't seen this movie, it's a good time. So I had a good time watching this, kind of reviewing, looking over all the footage, seeing what type of firearms are in this movie. Tune in next Monday for another Movie Monday Movie Guns review. Until then, train hard. You never know what's coming. Take care of the ones you love. Those are the ones that matter. And we'll see you on the next Movie Monday.